Hi everyone, this is Anna-Karin from Layers of Ink, and I'm happy to be back with you today with another video tutorial. And we're going to do a really fun resist technique with distress inks and the new Distress Micro Glaze by Ranger and Tim Holtz. This glaze is a waterproof sealant for craft projects, and you can use it to seal any kind of distressed product, the inks, stains, markers, paints, and also for stuff like watercolor, but we're going to use it with the distress inks. And I'm going to make the background that I used on this cute autumn bird crazy tag. And I did a tutorial on Ranger's blog a few weeks ago where I made another background also using the Distress Micro Glaze. And you can see it here. So this one it's basically a different version of a similar technique, just using some more ink and using the stencil and the stamps in a different way than that one. I'm going to put the link for this one below if you want to check that out too. Okay, so let's start. So what you need is that you need a tag die cut from Ranger's watercolor paper, and I used the Sizzix tag and bookplate die to die cut the tag. And you need the Distress Micro Glaze, and I also used this splotches stencil by Tim Holtz, which is the same one that I used on that blue tag that I showed you. We're going to start by inking the tag through the stencil. With fossilized amber distress ink. So just ink it as you normally would, starting from the edges, and you can pounce here and there to get a lighter color, so that it's not all exactly the same shade of yellow. I'm using the mini ink blending tools, but you can use the square ones just as well. Oops. And I made it a little darker towards the one side, but you can really do it however you want to. There we go, very easy. Next, just clean off the stencil with a paper towel. And put it back, only this time put it a little off center so that you see some of the white paper below and to the right of each little circle. And time for the Distress Micro Glaze. You need to use really little of this stuff. The jar will last a long time even if you use it often. And you just put very little on your finger, less than you think you'd need. And just apply it through the stencil. If you use too much, you'll find that it kind of collects at the edges of the stencil, so try to avoid that. And don't make them all the same. On some of them I used very little. I basically just rubbed over them without having almost any glaze on my finger. I'm sitting outdoors because the lighting is not good enough in my studio, so you have to excuse the occasional airplane flying by. Here's the one coming now. Okay. the stencil. Once you've removed the stencil, you might find that there's a bit of glaze that has pooled at the edges of the circles, but just leave it, because if you try to wipe that off now, you're going to spread that glaze out. And we're going to use these 4 distress inks: Rusty Hinge, Dusty Concord, Peeled Paint, and Forest Moss. So I'm starting with Forest Moss because I want it to be darker at the bottom of the tag. And some peeled paint, Rusty Hinge there and there, Dusty Concord, finishing with Forest Moss. Mist with water using the Tim Holtz Distress Sprayer, and then you take your tag and press it into the ink, and there. Oh, isn't that nice? I love it. And now you can just dab off the excess ink, and you'll see that the glaze has resisted the ink, so the yellow dots remain yellow while we have these nice white shadows underneath, or highlights rather. So here you can see the tag that we made now and another one that I made earlier. And you'll see that it looks a little different, and that's because with these types of resist technique you'll never get exactly the same result twice, which is one of the reasons I like it. So as you can see on this tag to the right, I used a little more glaze, so there are more the dots are showing more clearly. So just to show you, this is an example to the right here where I didn't use glaze. I just inked the dots through the stencil and then did the distress ink together with water. And because this distress ink reacts with water, you'll see that these yellow dots hardly show at all. We're going to do one more step before the background is done, and I used this graph stamp, also by Tim Holtz and Stampers Anonymous, and I inked it up with ground espresso, the newest distress ink color, which is a very nice rich brown. And I'm just going to press it on the tag. Don't worry about pressing evenly everywhere, it actually looks nicer if you don't. And then just to cover the whole tag. There we go. And what will happen now is that the micro glaze is going to resist this new stamped ink too. So if you take a cloth and you just wipe over the tag, you'll see that stamped impression disappear from the dots, and it basically looks like the stamping is behind those stencil dots, which is really cool. If you compare this background to the one that I did for Ranger, you'll see that in the Ranger tag the graph stamping shows inside the stencil dots, while here you don't get it there. This is because I stamped this tag before applying the glaze, which means the glaze protected that stamping inside the stencil dots. I also used the glaze when I colored the bird, so I applied a little bit of glaze on the bird's stomach, on the wing and on the hat. So when you color it, I watercolored it with distress inks. That glaze also resists the inks. You get preserved white areas without having to worry about that when you color. You can also see that on this bird crazy wall art panel that I made for Sizzix, that I used the glaze before coloring the bird, which then preserves the white of the paper and gives nice highlights to the project. This is hanging in my son's room now. He is crazy about the bird crazy birds. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you soon again. Bye! Happy crafting!